Backstage with Mothership. Solid Rock Radio begins now. Hear the best in new music, artist interviews, stories from the road, and more. You are now backstage, and here's your host, Mothership.
Hey, everybody. Fyrebrand is the band that was started by my guest, Josiah Brand. A new album has just dropped, and you need to know about it.
So, Josiah, we've met before. I've watched your band play at KCF, but we really didn't get a chance to talk much. So let's find out more about who Josiah Brand is.
Well, Josiah Brand is a very quiet, introverted, but very artistic type of guy who's married to an adorable coffeeholic cooking fanatic and has 3 cats to watch after and works at a food processing factory that works for Kroger. And he's always had a dream of doing a metal band that is centered on preaching the gospel. And that's been since I was 13. And I had multiple attempts to try and put a band together. It's one of the hardest things in the world to find people that want to work with that vision and are consistent and reliable. And so after probably 13 years of trying and not getting anything off the ground, I decided that I was going to do stuff myself. And FireBrand comes as the result of that.
Tell me about your spiritual journey.
I was raised in a Christian home. My mom and dad took me to church and they read the Bible to me. You know, they did devotions and memory verses and stuff like that, but they weren't pushy of it on me, and I never had a resistance really to Christianity of any kind. I've had good experiences in churches, good experiences with Christians growing up. At 7 years old, I received Jesus as my Lord and Savior, and then my parents got divorced about around a year later, and that was a very personally trying time for me. And so while life was basically having an entire upheaval, and it was not something that little Josiah really wanted to go through, that was where my growth as a Christian and everything kind of stunted, because I was just kind of in this whole upheaval of my life and everything with parents splitting and then remarrying and basically restructuring the whole family and where we lived and everything that was familiar, and spent a lot of my time in my teen years just trying to pretend like that wasn't happening or trying to escape it as much as possible. But at 17 years old, I had a rededication to the Lord because, you know, I got into some bad friendships and bad relationships. It wasn't something that I was so into that I had had really dire consequences. It just was, there was so much drama and a lot of interpersonal issues that just brought me to a place where I felt like I hit bottom. And my rededication sounded basically like, okay, well, I guess this is what I get for doing things my way. Lord, I guess it's time to do it yours. And things have kept on trucking since then. I, would start reading my Bible often. Going to church wasn't a chore anymore. I was in a relationship with a young lady who I thought I was going to marry. And when that didn't pan out, that just propelled me further into a relationship with the Lord. And I leaned into him instead of trying to seek out another relationship to be codependent with or whatever. And that was where a lot more deep internal work the Lord would do to me, that started taking place. I would really start to come to terms with forgiving and letting go of a lot of past hurt. And that's what brought about a lot of personal change that would follow me into the season of life where I'm in now. That's kind of the bird's eye view of that whole story, I guess I could say.
Was writing part of your healing?
That was more or less after healing and all that, because I still was very much in the idea that I needed a band to get any sort of musical efforts off the ground. And I had something of that sort in a form of a long distance project I had with some Canadian dudes. The project was called Placate the Masses. We had some stuff get off the ground, but because long distance collaborations and logistics of that only allow for so much progress to be made. we had a small tour in 2017 where I went up there, and we put together a live band with some temp members. But once that kind of hit a wall, there's a artist called Cell Dweller, and you probably have heard Ash talk about him once or twice, but he's done a lot of solo stuff, and I saw a video of his that broke down his writing process and recording, and I remember thinking, I could do that. But that all started kind of after going on the healing journey, but that was a good way that I could take a lot of what I learned and a lot of those experiences and get to express them musically.
Did you learn to play an instrument when you were younger?
I was always more of a singer.
Okay.
And I had the desire to learn guitar and some other things, but it was, I guess, the intimidation of not knowing where to start and not quite knowing who to go to, where I was at, that stifled my growth in that for a while. And then when I started doing FireBrand, it kind of was just like throwing me into the deep end of the pool, and you either swim or you sink. So I picked around and tried to actualize the ideas in my head, and that was what propelled me towards having some skill on an instrument. I still wouldn't say I'm really all that good at playing. I play caveman riffs, really, that they sound more complex than they actually are.
Power chords?
Yeah, well, a lot of it's power chords, palm mutes, and a little bit of fingers dancing around. I will say, because I'm not a guitarist primarily, it helps me think outside of the box some, because I've had guitarists that have helped me in a live capacity, that as they're learning the riffs, even as seasoned as they are, they're a little stumped on how it's actually played, because it goes counterintuitive to what you might be taught formally or anything like that. So even though both the guitarists that I've had are better than I am, sometimes they're still like, okay, how do you play this?
How did the band come together?
In technicality, it really still isn't necessarily together. Okay. So thanks to AD Windblown Media Records, well, what we do is we help each other out, not just behind the scenes in a studio capacity or in any of the visuals that accompany our releases, but we help each other out on a live front as well. And so whenever I get to play live, a lot of the times Ash Rolesser is filling in on bass. And just here recently, Mason Beard from Symphony of Heaven, I got to hire him for playing drums for Fyrebrand in this last batch of shows. And even though he's not officially a member of Fyrebrand at all, he was more than happy to jump on the skins for us, and he gelled well with us. He did well to put in the work and everything, and we were just like, hey, as long as you're up for playing with us, we'll keep on having you.
Nice. I had Ash on the show, and he talked a little bit about how the label is set up. It's more of a co-op where different people have different skills that they use to help promote each other, and then you play on each other's projects, that sort of thing. What is your behind-the-scenes skill that you use working with the group of artists?
I'm the video guy. So most of the time, if it's a visualizer, lyric video, or a music video, 90 to 95% of the time, that's done by me. Sometimes an artist will have an idea for me whenever they first say, I want you to do a music video for this song. Here's what we want, and go down the list. There's some other times where they're like, we want a music video, but we're not entirely sure what we want. And I'm like, give me a little bit. I'll come up with something for you.
Go.
It's a lot of fun.
When did you start doing video type things? Was this something you kind of do on the side anyway?
That was the first direction of a career that I wanted to go into, actually. So I have a degree in TV production, and much like a lot of other college graduates, I didn't end up finding a job in the field, but I've used the skills that I've gained from my time getting my degree, and all of the know-how and practice, I've still used that beyond my graduation. But that goes back as far as probably my sophomore year of high school. We had a multimedia publishing class, and the final unit was on doing video, and goes to show how old, like how outdated our technology was. We had these little Sony camcorders, and we recorded on DV cassette tapes.
Yeah.
We had to actually like record the footage on, like had to play the tape and then pull the footage, like record it from the tape to the computer. And so if there were any sort of jitters on the tape or whatever like that, you had to reshoot it and everything.
Oh my.
But I had this like cheesy little Dragon Ball style fight video that I did with my friends. And I had so much fun working on that. I thought, I could see myself going to college for this. And so that was where I started focusing a lot of my learning efforts. The latter years of my high school career, I actually told my parents to take me out of band after that year because I knew what I wanted to do. And I even found somebody who was a local videographer and like produced commercials and everything to take me under his wing and show me what to look for, how to do this in a professional sense, so I'd have some sort of leg up going into college. And between experience with video editing, shot composition, and everything, that did give me a pretty good bit of like a head start going into what I'd be learning for that. And so that would end up being something that would end up helping my music and, of course, the music for all the other artists that would be on the label for ADWMR.
How did you find Asher Lesser and ADWMR and become part of this label?
I had known who he was for a little while because I knew who Sean Browning was.
Ah, okay.
And I had interactions with him on social media. And because Ash was a friend of him, at some point in time, we were Facebook friends, but really didn't have much of an interaction. And then one day I get an invite to like the page of AD Windblown Media Records. And they said, this is the niche that we're in. We're actually looking for artists. And so I thought, what harm there be in throwing my name in the hat and seeing where it goes. And there was actually a questionnaire that really made me think about the utility of getting on a label, because there were things like, do you feel like you've gone as far as you can go to the point where you'd need a record label? And I really would be thinking, have I? I don't know. But
sort of second guessing your whole life, right?
But it was something that I thought of for a little bit. And after finishing the questionnaire, then I got on a phone conversation with Ash, and that was the first time we had ever spoke. And we were speaking the same language. The plans and trajectories that we had for our music efforts were totally parallel to each other. And so I would end up actually being the first signee to ADWMR outside of Ash's projects just before Pataconia would come on shortly after.
Wow. Yeah. And then y'all just take it off.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. What kind of influences did you have, and what kind of sound do you feel like FireBrand brings?
So FireBrand is very 90s inspired, and that goes back to my first bands that I was shown as I was becoming a metalhead. My dad showed me all of the 90s underground legends like Living Sacrifice, Tourniquet, Mortification, and there was also a pocket of industrial bands that were Christ-centric to one degree or another within that space. Circle of Dust, Clank, Mortal, Chatterbox, and I always found those folks fascinating. And so going all the way to now, FireBrand takes a lot of inspiration from metal from that era, and particularly from the industrial space, because like industrial metal was just something that I felt like was always the most fascinating to me. I liked how the electronics and the metal kind of blended together to create a sort of feeling that it had. And at the same time, I think from a practical standpoint, the old school influence kind of helps FireBrand stand out a little more because, for example, I don't tune down very low. I mean, I might be able to make it sound lower, but it's just drop D. And the way that the riffs are put together, I try to emphasize stuff more like groove, a little more movement and everything, rather than a lot of what you see in popular metal these days. And I like those bands, But it's one of those things, one where like, yeah, those bands that really were the foundation of where my music taste started off with, those are who I'm emulating to an extent. And I think from an artistic decision, doing like the 90s metal thing makes a sound for Fyrebrand all its own.
Is it safe to say you're the heaviest band on the label?
Yes.
So let's get more specific about your music and what you have out, and maybe some songs that you'd like to share about.
So something that people can also expect from a Fyrebrand album in general is kind of a dynamic spectrum. Something I've always loved about Demon Hunter was that you had varying extremes of, like, you'd have some super brutal tracks, but then you'd also have tracks that were more dynamic and more melody focused. And that's something I carry over to my albums. And even though people have been really loving the heavy aspect of this album, which has actually changed what I would be putting out as far as singles were concerned, because I had a plan before I started doing this promotion cycle, and people were really responding well to the intense stuff. And so I started putting out more heavy stuff. But I also have some songs that are more on the melodic side, like Heavy Chains 2, End of the World. And those are meant to, they take more introspective type of topics, like, End of the World is more like looking forward to the second coming of Christ, and the mindset of carrying that, where it's like, regardless what happens, whether my life ends or he comes back, I'm fine with whatever happens. And Heavy Chains 2, for anybody who's coming out of like drug addiction or anything like that, that's a song for whenever you have relapsed or something like that and you feel like you just suck. It's a song to encourage you out of that low spot to keep on going. So the themes and I guess you could say the dynamics are kind of all over the spectrum in terms of Vengeance Is Mine, the new album that's coming out. But there's plenty that the one who wants variety will enjoy, and there's plenty also for the one who just wants straight, like, crazy, bouncing off the wall type of metal and everything. There's enough for that person as well.
What's a song that's like, okay, this is Fyrebrand?
I'm stuck between two songs that are coming out on the album. One's already been a single, and it's called Ekbalo, a song about casting out demons, and it's got my buddy Hard Look featured on there as well. But that is a super heavy track that also, like, it takes its time in between the moments of impact. So it's, instead of being brutal like Automatic Fire, it's more brutal like Shotgun. It builds up to specific moments and everything. And then the song that actually opens the album, I'm a huge fan of that one. It's called Dethroned. And it's a song about paralleling the Exodus story with the freedom that Jesus won for us in his death, burial, and resurrection, and between the spooky atmosphere that it has, along with the just driving intensity of the guitars and drums, and the variety of vocal styles between intense as well as having some clean vocals in there. That's one that would be something that if somebody were like, who are you? Like, give me something that tells me all about you, just starting off with like, okay, here's this song.
How about some lyrics?
Principalities and authorities made a mockery from under his feet. Their conspiracy ending in defeat, coveting the throne where he sits as king. That's the chorus to Dethroned.
Nice. This album is coming out September 29th.
Yes, it is. It's a full album. There's a couple variants. Of course, you'll have the 10-song version that you will find just about everywhere digitally and everything. But there is a deluxe edition that is a physical copy exclusive. And it's got 2 bonus tracks on the first disc on top of the regular 10. But then there's a second disc, all of the instrumental counterparts.
Nice. That's a nice touch.
Mm-hmm.
Have you done much touring?
Unfortunately not. I would love to do touring at some point in time. not being able to find steady, consistent members that would be able to go outside of the few places I've been able to perform, that really limits where I'd be able to go. But I would love to tour. If there's anything that people can pray for Fyrebrand about, having our own full independent lineup would be great. And of course, for people to pray that the songs and any sort of influence of Fyrebrand, that it continues to lead people in the direction of the gospel.
So you mostly have been connecting with your fans on social media. Would that be correct?
Yes.
Has there been any particular online interaction that just kind of blew you away? Maybe someone's reaction to a song or how it impacted their lives?
Probably would have to be, I've had a lot of good and very, very touching reactions to the songs. I think probably the best interaction I've had to date was actually a long-standing one where back when I was more active on TikTok, there was a guy who was impressed with my music and sent me a DM, and he opened up to me about how he is kind of in a limbo. He, walked away from the faith and doesn't know what was true or anything like that. And I just offered to answer whatever questions that he had and talk with him about whatever. I had the privilege of being able to, hear him say, I'm a Christian again. And the music was the starting point for those conversations. And over time, the Lord would use me and any other influences that, would be godly in his life that brought him back to a place where he says, I follow Jesus and I can say I'm a Christian. And that is probably my favorite interaction to date. And I would hope that I would have more of those going down the road.
Now, you were at KCF. Mm-hmm. Did you have some fans show up there that you'd not met before?
There were some. There are others that I could say this being probably the third year that I've been at KCF. It's lots of fun, and it's really awesome to see the reoccurring faces, the people who are consistent to show up. And I'm humbled to be able to say, like, they have me on the list of people to go see amidst all of these other awesome bands out there that, they have bigger audiences than I do, and they are so much more established, and I know that, and have interacted with a good handful of them, and I know they're awesome people. And there's these folks there that are like, oh yeah, you're on our list for us to go see on this day and everything. And I was like, man, you guys are awesome.
I think watching people interact on the stage, to me, is it's magic.
Mm-hmm.
Not only is magical for the fans, but for you guys to be energized by the reaction. Is it like a superpower when you're up there and you see the reaction of the crowd and how they are reacting back to you? Does that like really rub off on how well you do? Oh, absolutely. Being in a performer's shoes, the energy I always describe as symbiotic. And it doesn't matter who starts it. The audience could start it or you, but when one projects the energy and it's received by the other, it just becomes cyclical. And what's even cooler is that it becomes easier for that cycle to keep going, really, in the smaller the venues that it is. The bigger ones are cool, but I've also, with Placate the Masses, I've played in really dingy clubs and bars where there are no stages. There's not even monitors. And it's like, you're right up here with the people that you're playing for, and the energy is uncontainable. And it is so fun whenever that cycle keeps going and doesn't stop till the last note. It's just raw.
Oh, yeah.
For somebody that wants to do the kind of things you're doing, what kind of musical advice would you like to share?
Like I said, I don't have a lot of experience on the road, but if anybody's wanting to do music, I would say, really hone in your craft. Don't expect everything to be perfect as you're starting. The fear of not being good enough is what's going to keep you from getting better. I cannot listen to my first songs. People like the first album that came out, and that's the only reason I keep it up.
God bless them, right?
Yeah, but it's really people wonder, is it quality over quantity or whatever like that? I'd say quantity is the road to quality. That's one way to improve. So the more you do it, the better you get. what also helps is finding somebody who knows what they're doing, somebody like a mentor, and that feedback's going to help even better, because I do just about all my production and everything myself nowadays. I needed help earlier on, and Ash and David Pataconi were incredibly instrumental in helping me hone the craft of songwriting, mixing, mastering, and all that other stuff. Their feedback was incredibly helpful. And at the same time, something that they did for me that was very helpful is while I was still coming into my own on that, they would mix and master a lot of the singles that were leading up to my last album, Beat the Machine. And they were taking it from the songs from where they were at to where they needed to be. And the advice that they gave was incredibly helpful for me to get to where, Beat the Machine, the album, was mixed and mastered by me, and then same going into Vengeance Is Mine, and it just keeps getting better. Mm-hmm. And that is something where, and I know not everybody wants to do their own production. Most people aren't nerds like me, but the fact still remains that whatever you want to do, spend a lot of time working to be good at it. And then just make as many friends as you possibly can. We have a lot of businessy terms for stuff like that, like marketing or networking or whatever like that. I have a lot of friends. I have a lot of friends at the label. I have a lot of friends that many would just call an audience. I have a lot of friends that come and see me at shows and are in the audience. All of it is like, these are my friends. That should be the goal, is to make as many friends along the way.
I used to have a mentor that said it's a small Christian world. And it's so true. We edify, build each other up, and support each other,
Absolutely.
Earlier, you said you were a nerd. Are you an organized nerd?
Sort of. My dad had a saying, and it kind of applies today, and this more applied to, how like the workshop or whatever was organized. But he would always say, everything has its pile and every pile has its place.
Nice.
My physical space doesn't always look the most organized, but I can tell you where everything's at.
Well, I think that's the most important thing. I actually kind of do that too. When I see everything getting real messy, I make a pile or put it inside like a little container, and I start at the top and work my way down and put it in its place.
There you go.
That's one way to do it. What would you change about the industry if you could?
Oh, gosh. I wish that people would be a little more charitable. I understand that you have to make money, especially if this stuff is your income and everything. But there's a lot of good talent out there. There's a lot of opportunities, and there's a lot of new ideas out there. Overall, if they don't resonate with the vast majority of listenership in the country or in the world and everything, that still, I think artists are worth hearing. There's a lot of, and I'm just talking about the industry and music industry in general, there's a lot of gatekeeping. There's a lot of favoritism. There's a lot of money first, people second. And like I said, I understand that you got to make a living, but there's a lot of people that, the artists in it sometimes will end up getting the short end of the stick. And I wish that wasn't the case. I wish that there was some way that people would be able to find ways to make a decent profit, but also make it to where a band can be funded and do what they need to do.
Right.
But the whole reason why I am where I'm at is because of, the charity of, fellow Christians who are doing what I'm doing, and they help me, I help them, and the Lord's blessing that model that essentially is built on 1 Corinthians 13, and it's something that's growing into a thing that people are noticing. I'm really excited for this album. I can't wait for people to hear it, and I think it's my best work yet, but hope everybody's blessed by the songs and the meanings extracted from them and the music that can speak to wherever they might be.
Y'all go check it out. What are your favorite road snacks?
Oh, gosh. I like trail mixes, and beef jerky is really nice.
I appreciate you taking out time. I am looking forward to hearing the new album and seeing you hopefully on the road sometime.
That would be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for more great music and check out my blog page on the Solid Rock Radio website for my guests' social media links. If you've missed any of my past interviews, you can find them uploaded to podcast.solidrockradio.org. Have a wonderful week and let's be kind to one another.